We strike with the wrath of the righteous!
We're recording. This is the Watchtower and Awakening podcast, and we're live from the top of the Watchtower. Episode 8, I think we're on.
I make it 7.
You have made it to the 7th, but 8 in total, because last one, Bonaventure was on. Visiting co-host Bonaventure. This week she's also on, in a manner of speaking, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a section, because me and Bonaventure discussed the second part of our adventure, our religious adventure in Texas. Actually, sorry. Texas was the first adventure, and this one's going to be in Louisiana. Anyway, so we'll just go through the rigmarole. WatchtowerandAwakening.com, Twitter, YouTube, blah blah blah. Okay, I'm former Jehovah's Witness. He is a lapsed Catholic. We are the Watchtower and Awakening. So what I'm going to do for you, Norris, is, first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to go to listeners' questions.
Excellent.
I think at this point, I should have maybe got you to hold your guitar and do like a little intro. Listeners' questions.
Ding, 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 ding.
Bang. F sharp. Okay, listeners' questions. To be fair, I don't think the Bible Reloaded listen to the podcast. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, I'm not too sure. Maybe Hugo or Jake could clarify, but they might listen to this one because I'm going to answer a question from Jake. If you don't already listen to the Bible Reloaded, you really need to go to YouTube and listen to them basically trousering the Bible from Genesis to Revelations. It's pretty good. I'm going to say, it's a question from them, but it wasn't directed at me by accident. I basically said, ask me a question and I'll do it on the podcast. And Jake said, can it be unrelated? And I said, well, I've listened to most of your stuff on YouTube, so yeah, totally unrelated. So his question, without further ado, is, if you had to be double-teamed by any famous duo of men, who would it be and why?
Oh, mine's easy. Go on, you do yours.
Well, after much deliberation, I've decided I'm going to go for like an X-Men sandwich, and I'll take Hugo Jackson. No, Hugo. What's he called? Hugo. No, not Hugo. What's he? Hugh Jackman. Wow.
Hugh Jackman.
I was thinking of Hugo Weaving and Hugh Jackman, like combined. Sorry, Hugh Jackman.
You go mad. You go mad, Mr. Watchtower.
Hugh Jackman, aka a Wolverine, Schnickety Schnick,
Yeah.
and James Marsden, aka Cyclops.
Can I ask you why you chose them to?
Because I just want to be Jean Grey. Why? Just generally because if I'm going to have like a strange man duo threesome fantasy thing going on, it might as well be superheroes. Why not?
Okay.
It's fair enough, isn't it?
Yeah.
What about you, Norris?
Eric Cantona and Bret Hitman Hart. Without a second's thought. Interestingly, you should ask this question because I fantasize about this exact scenario on a nightly basis and have done since I was about 8.
I need to know, Eric Cantona, is this in his heyday with the collar up, looking over his shoulder?
This is when he was old with a grey beard.
Yeah, like in the adverts. Is it that? Is
no,
it that
it's
Eric?
in his heyday, and whilst he is having his way with me, he'd have just turned his collar up, puffed his chest out, probably just pulled his collar down slightly so I could see the Indian warrior chief on his chest.
Yeah.
Through the thick mat of manliness on his chest.
His Tom Jones hairdo on his chest.
And then obviously...
basically, when it gets to climax, he puts up his collar and then he opens his arms and looks over his shoulder like that famous goal where it just sort of floats over the keeper.
Yeah.
And then you go...
And then Bret Hitman Hart would be...
well, he elbow drops you from the corner of the four-post bed.
Yeah, but he would actually be... he would have me in the position... Do you remember his finishing move?
No, go on.
When he sort of... what was it called? This is really bad because I actually own Hitman Hart glasses and everything.
Yeah.
And I think I used to wear pink leggings and a black vest to replicate his outfit.
Oh, just like your mum.
What was it called? So it might have been called like it wasn't a spine breaker or something. Basically, he sort of bent the legs round when they were on the back, and then he turned them over, and sat on them, and pulled
it
back.
was the Boston Crab.
Was it the Boston Crab?
Was it the Boston Crab?
So if it was the Boston Crab, which I don't think it is, But if it was the Boston Crabs, you imagine...
He was doing that
he
while
was bending
Cantona
me
was nailing you.
While Cantona was nailing me in the mouth.
Yeah, okay. I think that's enough.
And I'd just like to make it absolutely clear
Go on.
that I'm a heterosexual male, yet still find that image highly arousing.
That's fair enough. If you like, maybe me and the X-Men crew could maybe just like join you in a Royal Rumble.
Hooray! Very nice.
Anyway, okay, right. We're going to move on. You're welcome, Jake. Okay, so second listener's question, and again, this is no listener. This is the Twitter famous Harper.
Hi, Harper.
At Irish bloke, all capitals. You know, like creationists do, all capitals. Harper at Irish bloke. So Harper said, I basically tweeted out, we're going to record tonight. Any questions, welcome. Harper says, why do #atheists desperately want there not to be a God? And I told him, consider that answered in podcast form soon. So I hope he's listening. Why do atheists desperately want there to not be a God? I can spot an instant problem with that, but would you like to answer that? Why do atheists desperately want there not to be a God?
I don't desperately want for there not to be a God.
Why is that, Norris?
To be honest with you, I'm quite apathetic about whether there is a God or not. The way I see it is, nobody who is currently alive actually knows more about whether there is a God or not than I do. And I'm pretty sure that no one's ever going to know. Nothing has convinced me yet that there is a God. Although, I do see why people want to believe in a God, and I see why people do believe in a God.
Yeah, okay.
Because it brings them hope in what would otherwise be a desperate life.
Joy in a joyless world, hope in a desperate situation. Okay, the thing that I took exception with, Harper, if you're listening, you're not, but this is just sort of for the benefit of anybody else listening. Why do atheists desperately want there not to be a God? Atheists in general, I'm sure there are atheists that do desperately want there to not be a God, because it would maybe they feel like they've been proven wrong. I did a blog post about whether or not I would want to be proven wrong. You can check that out at watchtowerawakening.com. The problem with it is that to be an atheist, you simply haven't taken on board any God concept. It's that simple. So atheists, but by virtue of being an atheist doesn't mean that you want to desperately believe that there is no God. It's just that no proposition has been given to you that would make you think that a God exists. It's really that simple. We're just talking about the definitions of words here. So Harper seems to think that I, as an atheist, desperately wish there was no gods. It just so happens that I follow where the logic and the facts take me. There is absolutely no reason, or rather, there are reasons to believe in a God. If you think those reasons are valid, fair enough. But there's no proof of a God's existence. There's nothing logical that would ever lead me, or rather, there is nothing logical so far that has ever led me to believe that it's likely a God exists. I think it is massively unlikely. So I'm an atheist by virtue of the things that I understand. It's not about what I want to believe, it's about what I believe based on the evidence that has been provided. It's that simple. You're welcome, Harper. Okay.
Yeah.
Question number 3.
Here we go.
Listener's question. Again, probably not a listener, maybe a sometime listener, because I vaguely know this guy. The third one's from Holden Up at Pseudo-Selfless. Feel free to go follow him. Okay, his question is, if you were to become a follower of any religion, what would it be? So if you had to become, gun to your head, you've got to follow a religion. Okay. What would it be, Norris, and why? Do you want some time to think about that?
I don't need any time to think
about it. No time to think about it. Go.
It would be Catholicism, because that would be the smallest step. Easy.
So what you're saying is for sheer, like gun against your head, for sheer ease, you would say, I'll pick Catholicism. I already know the steps that I need to take. I know the right sort of the right rituals to follow. Yeah. I kind of know
the quite easily.
Right.
Yeah. And I also know some people go to the church, so
right, it's fair enough.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. My answer. I find it difficult to get close to any sort of modern day religion, because one of my problems really is monotheism, like to believe in a single God. I can't get my head around it. So but what I can get my head around is pantheism. I think one of like the ancient religions, where there was a belief in many gods, Greek or Roman. I think I could take on board pantheism. Like it kind of, I think without scientific knowledge and without an understanding of the world around you, I think it would almost stand to reason, being that it's not reasonable at all, but it would kind of stand to reason, being absent of the facts. If there was a volcano and it erupts and it kills many people, it's kind of understandable that something caused that to happen. Maybe it angered one of the gods. Maybe when there's a tsunami, Poseidon's been angered, so he sends a tsunami to sort out the land, and maybe there's a god of the land, and the god of the land sort of protects the land, and sometimes the land splits or erodes, or and maybe that's that god getting weak when there's lightning and people think that it's Thor with his hammer and stuff. Like I get my head around that. So I think it'd be some form of pantheism where I didn't have to really do any kind of I wouldn't have to follow any kind of specific dogma, but I would just have to sort of make the right preparations to please the right God, depending on what it was that I was doing, whether it was travelling by land or sea or wanting wealth or health. I can get my head around that.
Even though I see where you're coming from, you've got a lot of gods to please there. A lot of gods to think about. At least I've only got one God.
I think that to me is kind of how it makes sense though, because the world doesn't gel, and because things go wrong, and there's massive problems in the world, like a volcano or a tsunami or like a typhoon. If you're back in time and you're in that environment, it almost stands to reason that you have angered something more powerful than yourself, and if you choose that to be a god, and that god is then responsible for the things that you are afraid of, then maybe those things that you're afraid of can be tempered by those gods.
But if you just believe in one god that's all-knowing and all-powerful, then you've only got one person to go to. It's a little bit like, when you get these companies who consolidate your debts for you, right? Instead of having to ring 10 different companies who you're in debt to, one company comes along and consolidates all of your debts. So you have one point of contact for your debts. So my argument would be that to have one God is a lot easier, and just to get your head around the fact that he controls the volcanoes, the sea, the land, and everything else.
Which is exactly why I think that it's actually more irrational, because if that one God is all powerful, that's why religious people back down into the God in his mysterious ways. 1 minute he's wiping out people through a typhoon, next minute he makes sure that there's a drought so lots of people starve. It doesn't make any sense. No,
he's one person, but he's got a split personality.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's like that. That's one of my problems with the we are all made in God's image, and like many good writers have pointed out, it's quite clear we're not made in God's image. It's obvious that God is made in our image. Like we have projected all of this stuff onto God. That's why he's vengeful. That's why he's spiteful. That's why he's a war god. In the Old Testament, stuff like that. I'm speaking specifically of Christianity. I know that, but that just happens to be the one that we've had the most sort of experience with. But it's quite clear, if you've got like a powerful, vengeful God that's jealous and wants like sacrifices and wants to be worshipped, I think that's so pathetically human that I don't believe any all-powerful God could have the attributes of a human. Mm-hmm. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, you win. Okay, fine.
Right. Okay. Well, that was listeners' questions. I might put like a little jingle there. Yeah. Right, so what I'm going to introduce you to is a little conversation that me and Bonaventure had last night. And it was, we were sort of reliving our time in New Orleans. What we did when we were there was we bumped into some, like a South Baptist kind of church that's into all of the hate, just like Fred Phelps and his Westboro Baptist Church. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Right, I'm going to press play.
Yeah.
You're going to listen. Then we're going to have a little chat in the outro. I'll skip my eye on that in case he just does it. I'm just talking for half an hour. Okay, I'm back.
Do the ice cubes again.
Okay. I can hear you can hear some ice cubes, and that's I'm twizzing around some ice cubes.
You are.
And I'm drinking. What am I drinking, Bonaventure?
You're drinking Ruby Red grapefruit vodka from all the way from Houston, Texas.
Houston, where we went to NASA.
We did.
And you're wearing a NASA jumper.
I am.
All right.
Where's yours?
I left it at home, actually.
Rude.
It glows in the dark and everything.
Mine does too.
Yes.
Matching.
There will be some geek listeners to this going jealous.
There will.
Okay, so nice segue actually. Speaking of America, shall we just put it like that?
Yeah, okay,
Speaking of America, on the last podcast we spoke about the Austin Stone Church.
We did. I remember it well.
And the second half,
Yes.
the part that happens after Austin Stone Church, you were a little bit upset that me and Norris were going to talk about it. And
I haven't really spoken to you since.
And I thought about that, and I thought maybe we just have a little chat, and
Okay.
and I'll be able to play some of this to Norris,
Okay.
and we can gauge Norris's reactions or thoughts.
Yes.
Yeah?
Okay. I like that better. I feel more included.
So
Yes.
we went to New Orleans,
We did.
or New Orleans, as they like to call it.
Yeah.
We went on Labor Day weekend, and when we
did.
arrived, the guy that sort of was checking us in, he
The
was like,
bellhop.
"Yes, the bellhop." He's like, "Y'all here for Southern Decadence?"
He was Irish, so that's not true, but carry on.
No, the guy behind the counter.
Oh!
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I thought you were talking about the
and
Irish bellhop.
we were all like,
Southern what?
We were like, Southern
Southern
what?
who?
And then his eyes widened, like, "You're gonna see some shit." Yeah, it's strong, isn't it?
That's really strong. Yes.
So his eyes widened, like, "You're gonna see some shit." And to be fair,
We saw some serious shit.
some shit. Yeah, it turns out for those of you that don't know, Southern Decadence is like one of the largest gatherings of gays in the South.
Yes, in the summer.
In the summer, yeah. It happens in New Orleans, and like the main strip of New Orleans is
Bourbon Street. Indeed.
where we had some good times.
We did.
We literally had a gay old time.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
One of the best things that's ever happened to me happened on Bourbon Street on one night out.
Indeed.
We walked out of a bar, slightly inebriated,
Only slightly at that stage, yeah.
still in charge of our
We
faculties.
were at that stage.
And I kind of walked out with my back to a ruckus that was going on.
There was a ruckus. I was walking forward, you were walking back, and we were talking.
Yes, and
I grabbed you inappropriately.
you grabbed me inappropriately, and as I turned, my eyes widened.
My eyes were already wide.
And I got to experience something that I never thought I'd experience, but I'm so fucking glad I did.
Yes.
There was a Southern Baptist hate group just there in the middle of Bourbon Street with their not quite sort of Fred Phelps, God hates fags, they protest funerals and all that kind of shit. And I think these guys were kind of like, they're not as high profile, but on a par with the same kind of rhetoric and hate.
Yes.
Just take a little sip. Well, they were there, weren't they? In force with their banners. There was even a banner that said rug munchers, fudge packers, things like that. Muff divers,
yes.
Yeah. And they had a megaphone, and they decided that they were just going to sort of stand there in the middle of Bourbon Street
Yeah.
and preach the hate.
Yes, they did. And did they?
Let
me tell you.
Wow.
It was a sobering experience.
The only thing that stopped it from being a sobering experience is because we managed to drink through the sobering experience and get to the other side.
And boy, did we.
Wow. So, explain to me what you took away from that experience. First of all, just tell me what you thought, like, of their sort of their general hate preaching, and then go into detail about when the guy sort of called you over. Explain that.
So when we first came out, we were shocked, weren't we? And we just I think we both stood there with our mouths wide open. They were stood in the middle of basically gay pride, and they had banners shouting "Homos go to hell," and there was a really good atmosphere on Bourbon Street, wasn't there? It was so friendly, everyone was really cool, brilliant. And they were just sort of stood in the middle of it, just shouting the odds, and everyone on Bourbon, I remember them saying, everyone on Bourbon Street is gay, is a raging homo, and you're all going to hell. And I just remember shouting at them, "You're on Bourbon Street." Yeah. And they were like, "No, everybody else, like the most
everyone on Bourbon Street is a homosexual You're all going to hell.
You're all going to
and you're
hell.
right.
I
You're
just
on
remember,
Bourbon Street.
Yeah, I remember saying to them, "You're like," it was in my fog, in my alcohol fog. I remember saying, like, "You're on Bourbon Street," and everyone was like, "Whoa," and applauding, and they were just like, "No, everybody else," and we were just like, "Well, that was a good argument." They called me a whore twice. They actually looked at me and pointed at me and called me a whore twice.
Yeah, they did.
They told me to go and do the laundry.
Yes.
And they also told me that my husband hadn't trained me very well.
I was going to say that because I wasn't sure whether you were going to mention that because it was obviously anti-gay.
Absolutely.
Obviously, so you know it was muff divers, fudge packers, all that kind of stuff, faggots. They were shouting all this stuff. But what struck me as a little bit strange was that they were massively like misogynistic as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not that I wouldn't expect that, but I just thought if you're going to have a go at people's sexuality, then
stick to a theme.
random people that are coming up and saying, "Guys, what are you doing? What are you talking about?" And they're just like, "Oh, look at you! Your husband didn't train you very well."
Yeah.
That just seemed really strange to me because, like, one, you may or may not have a husband.
Yeah. But they were shouting at straight people. They were shouting at straight people that they were, "You're gay," and there was no.
I was consecutively cut. Like the one of the guys who had a megaphone, he was saying things like, and this faggot and like, and I just kept standing there going, "I'm not even gay. I'm not even gay.
Yeah.
I'm not even gay." Every time he said it, and I couldn't have said that anymore, really, to the point of like
just kept
ridicule.
Shouting homo in your face. It was so the only word I think I can use to describe it. It was so uneducated. It felt really uneducated. They didn't really have a point. They were just out to cause trouble, spread hate. It seemed bizarre.
No, they call themselves street preachers.
That's right. Yeah.
And preaching was not what they was doing, as I explained to one of them sooner or later.
No, not at all.
It wasn't preaching. There was not like shouting Bible verses and shouting that you're a sinner and you're going to go to hell. That didn't do it for anybody. Like that's not preaching. It's not trying to win over your audience because your audience is either half cut or high.
Yeah,
in the middle of Bourbon Street, having a good time and having in more ways than one a major blowout.
Yes. Beautiful, well played.
Do you know what I mean? Though, like this wasn't about conversion. This wasn't about getting the message out. This was about telling people you're going to hell, and now that we're in the middle of Sodom and Gomorrah, we can feel protected by God's Spirit because you're all the ones who are creepy and weird, and we're the ones that are moral and just.
I assume you remember, like when the gay because they were there with their megaphone, and then the gays were there and they had their megaphone.
Yeah, a guy turned up with his own megaphone.
Yeah, which was really good because they were shouting so hard over everybody else that it was kind of nice to have another megaphone to shout back. I don't know if you remember the gay side of the argument. They kept saying, "Stop worrying about us. Like, this is not religion. Our religion, we preach love and we preach respect and da da da."
Yeah.
So I found that quite odd because they were basically being shouted at about religion, but they were saying, despite all of that they were religious and that they would meet their maker. And do you remember that?
Yeah.
I remember saying to you at the time, it was weird that.
Yeah, from our point of view, as in me and you, lapsed Catholic atheist and former Jehovah's Witness atheist.
Yeah.
From our point of view, we were just like, wow, listen to these religious nutjobs doing their thing.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So we were the exact opposite spectrum.
Yes.
Free, liberal, not giving a toss about people's sexuality, not fearing an imaginary hell. So we're just looking at them going, wow, that is quite a spectacle. But many of the people, they were going up to them and they were just they were saying I'm a Christian.
God, my God.
Lots of people were saying, my God, I'm a Christian just because I'm gay. I'm not going to hell. My God is an accepting God.
Yeah.
And that struck us both because you could see the tapestry of Christianity right there right from the ultimate kind of extreme. We're going to tell you you're going to hell. We're going to shout you. We're going to call you faggots.
Yeah.
Completely unwavering, unblinking, just that proper cult mentality, and then these free-spirited, drunk, gay, lesbian, bi, transgender, filling the streets shouting, "I'm a Christian, stop being so anti-Christian." But then likewise, the fundamentalists with their banners and stuff were just like, "No, we're the Christians. You're the guys that don't get it." And it's I don't usually like to be political on these things, but like this is the same as what's going on with ISIS right now, or IS or whatever the hell you want to call them. They have this thing where they're saying, we're establishing our caliphate, is it called? We're establishing that we're doing God's will, the Quran, convert or die kind of thing. And there's many Muslims around the world that are coming out and saying, no, that's not my Islam. Yeah. That's not my Muhammad. That's not my Allah. Yeah. And you're just thinking, well, there's got one of the things that sort of brings me right. One of the things that sort of condenses or reduces all of my atheism down to. I just need some facts. It's really as simple as that. So when I see fundamentalists shouting "you faggot," and then I see a gay person saying "but God accepts me for who I am," they're both reading from the same book that enslaved people, and the same book that freed people. Yeah. Exactly the same with Islam as well. When I see all of that, I just think, well, there's only one way we can find out who are the real Christians and who are the real Muslims, and that's to check out your holy books, which many of you aren't doing. So it just seems a bit crazy to me, because there's only one way to find out, and it's to find out the facts. Yeah. And so the facts can only be dragged out of the holy books. Yeah. And if the holy books allow them to murder, then that's what the holy books do. Mm-hmm. So that proves that the people that are sort of moderate, they're just not following their holy book, because their holy book does not let them be moderate. Yeah. I agree. I'm not summarising it like it's an easy thing to figure out. I'm just saying
it was quite
baffled
confusing.
me.
Stood there, just sort of, we were very much on the side of all the gay people who were just out having a good time. We were with them and we were chatting with them, and they were nice and they were friendly, and but it was confusing listening to a conversation like that. It was kind of odd. Yeah. It really stood out a little bit, I think, to me.
If you remember, there were people on the balconies.
Yes, there were.
The lovely French ornamental balconies.
Beautiful, yeah.
It was a wonderful place, wasn't it? There were people throwing the
beads.
They have like in New Orleans, they have like loads of beads and stuff for like $1. You can buy them everywhere. And obviously, the free spirited gays and people like that, they were very overtly wearing lots of these, and they were throwing them down at the people that were protesting, I guess. Yeah. And if they went near them, if they hit them, they were like, "Hey!"
Everyone, but they were hurling them at the.
Yes, and the ones that missed the preachers, you can't see me, but I'm using air quotes. Yeah. The one that missed the preachers, people were picking them up on them around the neck. People were cheering when they put them on. Yeah. So I ended up with about 8 or 9 of these on.
You did.
And I remember, I don't know if I told you this at the time, but I remember standing there in front of them, and I was attempting to sort of get one of their attention to ask them a question. And a girl came out of nowhere, and she said to me, "Why are you even wasting your fucking time?" That's what she said to me. And I just shrugged my shoulders and just went, "Research?" And she just like shook her head and carried on walking. But I thought to myself, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Not only is it something that I never thought I'd see in the flesh.
No, but being able to question them was a big thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, first thing that crossed my mind was questioning, but then I got taken away in the moment by a homosexual guy that was with me. That was like, we were having a bit of a chat, and he encouraged me to infiltrate the camp.
He did.
So we sort of snuck in at the sides of the pack with their with the banners.
Yeah? You did, yeah.
So we kind of like snuck under their radar, and then we popped up in the middle of them. And the gay guy was like shouting. He was sort of repeating whatever the guy was saying with the megaphone. Yeah. And I was stood right next to the guy with the megaphone. So every time he said homosexuals, I was like, yeah. And then he was like, lesbians, and I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you're all going to hell. And I'm like, yeah. And then I was like, actually, you're not going to hell. It's all right. Don't worry about it. And
hell doesn't
like,
exist. Don't worry about it.
You're all sinners. You're damned. And I was like, you're not sinners. You're not damned. Everything's going to be all right. And then a big guy with the glasses on. If you ever see the Street Preacher videos, of which we're on
we're on
one, and I shall link that in the if you're looking on YouTube, I'll link that at the bottom of the comment section, or in the information area of iTunes or whatever. We're in it for a split second, So the guy's shouting, and this big guy with the glasses, he pushes me in the back, and I turn around. And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, move over there. And I was like, last time I checked, this is like America, land of the free, home of the brave. Am I right? And they tried to do the same with the gay guy that was with me, infiltrating the pack.
Yeah.
They tried to push him out, and he was like, "Motherfucker, I know my rights." So he was like my hero briefly. I ended up coming out eventually. Not of the closet. I came out of the hate pack.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah?
You did.
I didn't come out of the closet.
Okay.
No matter how much I danced with the gays.
You did. You danced.
Yeah. So we went for a drink then because
We did.
because they up sticks and they moved further down Bourbon Street.
That's correct.
We had a few more drinks.
We did.
We caught them back up, and I thought this time I'm not going to be too silly. I was eventually, but I'm not going to be too silly. I'm actually going to try and have a conversation with
Yeah,
one
you
of them.
did. Yeah.
And I think it's at that time when the guy he sort of waved you over, right?
Yeah. So I was stood there on my own, and I have this thing that it's like a judgmental stare. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I have,
yeah.
Okay, so I have a judgmental stare. So because I'd had a beverage or two, 12, I remember standing there just looking at them with this look, just going, what am I watching here? What's happening? It was like, it blew my mind a little bit. I was quite like overawed by it all. So as I was sort of looking at them with my eyebrow of shame, you've seen, that's correct, yeah.
Don't put yourself down, you've got two eyebrows.
Wow, you used to call
Oh, you mean
it
monobrow? One of them was raised, you mean?
One of them was,
yeah.
My eyebrow of shame. He called me over, he sort of, he looked me in the eye and he called me over and he said, "What's your problem?" And I said, This isn't my problem. And he was like, "Where are you from?" Really aggressive. And I said, "I'm from England." And this to me is absolutely shocking. Why? I want to know why. So I explained that in England we just let people be. It's something that I've never ever witnessed before. And really, although I enjoyed it, I enjoyed watching it. I didn't enjoy it. I enjoyed watching
Car Crash
it.
TV.
Yeah. I never want to see it again. And he was like, "Why not? I'm spreading the word of Lord." And I said, "But you've called me a whore twice tonight. You've never even met me." And I'm pretty sure Jesus wouldn't call me a whore. I get the impression that he'd think I'm an all right kind of person. Shut up, don't comment. And he was just like, "Well, yeah, what are you from? Where are you from? What do you do?" "Oh, yeah, well, you seem like a really nice person." And I was like, oh, I am. Shut up. I was like, I am a nice
after
person.
he's called you a whore.
And you've called me a whore twice. You don't even know me. You don't even know me. I said, "You've told me to go and do my laundry. Let me tell you, it's done." And he was getting a bit irate.
Living out of a suitcase, dude. Yeah, and you said about me, didn't you? You said you've called my friend.
You called my friend a homo several times over the night. I said, and he isn't. He absolutely isn't. But yet you're shouting in his face. You're calling him a homo. "Well, we just preach." I said, "That's not what preaching is, though. You've not really mentioned much about the Bible. You've just shouted at people. Do you really think that's the way that you're going to draw in the crowds?" "Well, it's what God sent us to do." So I basically asked this guy. I said to him, like, I genuinely don't understand where you're coming from. "Do you have a wife? Do you have children?" And he said, yeah, I've got a wife and a child. And I was like, "Well, would your Saturday night not be better spent with them rather than shouting at gays on the gayest street in America right now? You know, you're just picking him out. Like, why aren't you sat at home with your family?" And he was just like, "This is the Lord sent me." And so I just shook his hand and walked away. And I was just like, I can't, there's nothing I'm going to say to this guy that I can't.
While this was going on, because I kept seeing you out of the corner of my eye while you were having a conversation with him, and I was talking to another one of the guys, and
his brother, we've recently found out.
Yes, the guy, the same guy's brother, through doing a little bit of research. Well done, Benaventure.
Thank you.
Bonaventure, even Benaventure. Sorry,
I quite like that. I might change my name.
Bonaventure.
Sorry.
Yeah. So while this is going on, I'm talking to his brother.
Yes.
And I'm only getting like bits of conversation because people keep coming up into his face and saying like, you're an evil bastard and things like that. Yeah. So then once he'd sort of talked to them briefly, I'd carry on my conversation. But my opener was, I said to him, you have here the banner that you're holding. It said, I can't remember exactly the words that it said, but it said something along the lines of, if you don't turn around and face Jesus, you're going to spend an eternity in hell.
Yeah.
Or something like praise the Lord, or you'll spend an eternity in hell, something like that. And I said to him, I'm from England. This kind of thing never happens. So I'm just curious. I said, I'm an atheist, so I don't believe in any God, no God whatsoever. It's just not on the cards as far as I'm concerned. So I don't believe in the supernatural in general. So your threat of hell, it isn't like a real thing for me. That it seems like you're throwing it out like a threat, but because I don't think that a supernatural place like hell is even in existence, I don't really have the ability to fear it, because it could be anything. You could say that it was a place with like flowery balloons and stuff. It doesn't. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you describe it. If it's supernatural, it's not going to either entice or fear me. And he said it was weird, because I wanted like a genuine answer, and he was like, oh, hell is real, and I was just like, no, I know you think that, but I'm saying that it's not a real thing to me, so I'm gonna need something else for me to even bother picking up the Bible to start with. And he said well, let me ask you this, do you sin? And I said no, and he said, oh, you don't sin, so you're perfect. And I said, no, it's not that I'm perfect. Far from it. It's just that I don't see sin as a meaningful concept. I don't understand what you mean by sin, because if I believe that not that I believe no God exists, but if I've never been presented with any kind of reason to believe a God exists, how could I ever understand what kind of rules might piss that God off? Like, sin is just not a meaningful concept to me. And obviously his brain just he wouldn't compute that. No. He just decided that I must just be lying, because he more or less said that because I'm fearful of my sin and what it might mean, I want to ignore God and carry on with my sin. And I was just like, no, you're not getting it. I don't believe in a God, and I don't believe in your hell. So I'm going to need some factual basis. And even he mentioned evolution at one point, but I actually, as much as I would have loved to gone down that route, I steered him clear of it, because I was like, no, you're changing the subject here. Like, I'm specifically asking, I don't fear a hell because I don't think it exists. Your Bible can say it, but nothing else in the Bible seems to make any sense. I'm going to need some kind of factual basis for me to think that something like hell could even exist. And even if it did exist, why would I then be fearful of it? And that would be my only reason. I'm going to save myself eternal damnation if I just follow the Bible. And let me tell you, if I just followed the Bible, I would deserve eternal damnation. And it basically ended with, I can't remember the exact conversation, but we spoke for quite some time, maybe 25 minutes, half an hour.
We did.
But it always narrowed down to the usual religious kind of get out clause, which is you've got to have faith. And I said, well, it's okay if you say that, but I have no faith. Not faith like you think. I don't have any faith in any God. So what else have you got? And he basically left me with, look, you've got to have faith, and you have to let Jesus Christ into your heart, and then it'll all make sense. And I said, so I've got to believe it before I understand it. And he's like, yeah. And I said, well, I cannot. My beliefs are only based on my understanding of the world. So I need to understand something in order to believe it. That's just kind of how the process works. So that's not my fault. And I would like to think that a God would understand that that's not my fault. So I think it was Bertrand Russell. I'm not really too sure. Somebody could correct me if you're listening. But I think it was Bertrand Russell that when he was asked, if he got to the pearly gates and he was presented like with God, like what would he say to God, because he'd been a heathen his whole life. And he said the most honest thing that I think he could have said was, I apologize, God, but you didn't leave me any evidence. That's your problem, not mine. So I'm sure if the God that they seem to that they seem to believe does exist, he would prefer honest disbelief or honest unbelief to dishonest belief, just to get your ass out of the fires.
I mean, since we've been home and we were doing that research and we were trying to look into them, and we found the video of us and pictures of us taken by other
Links
people
below.
And we found out since that those two that we were talking to, they were bad boys who lost the way, were put into prison, and then all of a sudden found Jesus, and now run their own church, and like all that stuff I gave you. It's quite scary. They don't just go to Bourbon Street. They go to the Super Bowl, and they do their preaching all over at massive events where people are there. It's not just a homo thing. It's not like we're going to go and stake them out and get to them, and it's not that. It's almost like they're attention seeking. It feels more like
very much so.
They're attention seeking in any which way they can. And it doesn't matter where, as long as they're centre of attention.
One of the blog posts I'm writing, so I presume it'll probably be out by the time this is out, so feel free to check it out at whatsharonawakening.com. Links below again. The most recent one I've been writing is about childhood indoctrination, and the other thing that just springs to mind about when we were on Bourbon Street was that they had a young boy with them, and he was maybe... What do we think?
9.
Yeah, 9 or 10.
Yeah.
Definitely not in his teenage years.
No, definitely not.
But yeah, I'm guessing closer to 9 or 10. Yeah, he seemed a little overawed by this. It may be one of his first outings. Certainly, it seemed like his first outing in the middle of like a gay capital like that.
Absolutely.
He was very small.
Yeah.
Glasses on. Just like he was just like looking up at everybody.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with him even being there. I mean, we had guys walking around in like speedos and leather chaps and things.
Chaps,
it was that kind of environment, and that is not a place to bring your child.
No.
And the silly thing is as much as they decided that they had the moral high ground, I doubt that there was any adult, homosexual, bi, lesbian, transgender, whichever person you picked off that street that was an adult.
Yeah.
Would not have thought it was a good idea to bring a child to that area.
No, I agree. Yeah.
And to be fair,
at night,
it was about 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
in a busy place where there's loads of drink. So this little lad is looking up, and he seems a little bit intimidated, but sure enough, the power of Christ compels him, as do the adults around him. Not the people having fun.
Yeah.
The people with the banners.
Yeah.
So they put a megaphone in his hand. And he stood there preaching.
Yeah.
And not preaching, screaming,
hate.
Screaming hate and screaming
You're going to hell,
about hellfire,
shouting
random scripture and verse.
Yeah.
And it was a fervour, wasn't it? It was a little bit.
Yeah.
It was a little bit too much.
Yeah.
It was proper childhood indoctrination. That is proper child abuse. And if you remember, the megaphone that was on the side of the homosexuals, every time the lad spoke, he just pressed the button on the megaphone and he just kept going, "This is child abuse. Yeah. This is child abuse." Buddy. And it really was. It made me feel a bit sick for the child, because he shouldn't have been in that environment.
No.
He was.
They were stood around him. They were stood, weren't they, protecting him, so they knew that what they were doing was wrong. Otherwise, they'd have just let him stand out, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
They would performed a protective circle around him.
And he had to be close to people, adults that were inebriated, that were coming up to these people with the banners. Yeah. They were telling them that they were immoral, telling them that they were sick, telling them that they weren't real Christians, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And this young lad had to bear witness to that. And all I could think was, this is doing nothing but affirm everything they have told him. Yeah. He's stood there.
He was regurgitating, wasn't he?
Yeah. Not only was he doing that, he was doing the rote learning kind of. He was remembering what he'd been told to shout, and he was shouting it.
Yeah.
And he's obviously, taught the Bible and stuff. But they'll tell him about the wicked world, and then at 9 years old, he's on Bourbon Street, and I just thought to myself, "Wow!" A 9-year-old's mind can't comprehend that kind of stuff. So to him, that is Sodom and Gomorrah. That is the world. That is the thing to be fearful of, and he does. At his age, he won't even understand sex in general, let alone the massive spectrum of sexuality that they are clearly never going to speak to him about, because it's black and white, isn't it? It's like it's right and it's wrong.
Yeah.
That is what is wrong, and he will fear it, and he did seem to fear it, and I just felt sorry for him.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think they're guilty of quite a few things.
Yeah, I think it was. I think the whole experience. I mean, we took a pic when we walked out that bar and sort of bumped into them. We took a picture, didn't we? And our faces, both of our faces on it is like horror and happiness, because we were like. we were excited to see it, but we were pretty horrified to see
Yeah.
it. You know,
It was horrifying, but I think
we were glad to see it. I don't know. If
I've always wanted
Yeah.
to see it. I've only ever seen it on documentaries or on the news or whatever.
And it's almost like you think it's not happening, but then when you see it, you're like, oh, it's happening. And then we spent a lot of time with them. We were with them the first time we were with them for like a good hour, maybe an hour. We lost a lot of time that night.
Yeah.
And then when we had a few more drinks, and then we followed. Well, we went up and they were there again, and we spent another hour maybe with them. And all the while, it was horrifying.
Yeah. And they never had anything new to tell.
No.
And
They didn't have a different side to
said,
the argument. They didn't want to have another argument. They just were right, and that was it.
Yeah. And the same rhetoric was being spouted all the time, no matter my actions, because at one point I was sort of laughing in the face at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Then I infiltrated the camp and I was threatened by one or two of them.
Yeah.
I had a bit of a playful kind of rant next to the guy with the mic.
Danced in front of them.
So later on, I had a long conversation with one of them. I tried to get some serious dialogue going, and I did get some serious dialogue going, but it was never going anywhere other than accept Jesus into your heart, and the Bible will make sense to you.
Yeah.
All that stuff about slavery and stoning people to death, that'll all make sense to you, and you'll be able to contextualize it as long as you've got Jesus in your heart.
Yeah.
And then me trying to sort of block the path of the megaphone by dancing in front of it whilst being called a faggot.
Yeah.
I did that for a little while. That tickled me.
Yeah, nothing worked. Nothing worked.
But yeah, the same rhetoric was spouted no matter what.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful experience.
It was. It really was.
It was.
It was horrifying.
It was consciousness raising.
We sort of like we woke up in the morning, didn't we, with like our eyebrows like at our knees because we were so hungover, but also raised, just going, what happened? It was like, was that real? We were looking at the pictures on our phones, just going, oh God, it was real, but it can't have been. It was one of those experiences that I will never, ever, ever forget for the wrong reasons. You know what I mean? It was just horrifying.
Yeah. Also, in a second, I want you to play that. You won't be able to see the video, obviously, listeners, but you'll be able to hear the audio.
Yeah.
So you're going to grab that.
Yeah. I'll go grab
and then we're going to play that. Right. So I've got the thing. Right. I'm just about to press play. You can hear two megaphones.
Yeah.
One is obviously the preacher. The other one is the guy that's turned up to sort of anti-preach the preachers. So he's in the background, blah blah blah, trying to wind them up, and they're shouting. But if you listen to what he says, you can just about make out some special things that I'll just explain in a sec. Here we go.
Shame on you, filthy, wretched sinners! God has got some special judgment for you, whore. You're gonna face a holy God and give an account for your filthy, wicked heart. Shame on you! Shame on you! You're not a Christian. You don't know Jesus Christ. You're on your way to hell, sinners. You're on your way to hell. You've offended a holy God. You've offended Jesus Christ. He's gonna judge what comes out of your mouth. Yeah, he's gonna judge you. He's gonna judge your sin. He's gonna judge your wicked heart. So full of lust. So full of sin.
Okay, I'm just going to stop it there. Two things. One, you could... I know you can't see the video, but trust me, there's a lot of there's a lot of enthusiasm that he's thrown out, and you hear him say, "God's got some special judgment for you, whore." I mean, that's a bit, like the girl wasn't really doing anything. She was just like, "Fuck you, man." Yeah. And he also says, "You're not," like, because people were coming up and saying, "I'm a Christian, what you're doing is wrong," and he was like, "You're not real Christians. You need to let Jesus into your heart."
Yeah.
That was just a little taste.
Like, I know this is really bad, but for me, it's not even what he was saying; it's the aggression.
Yeah,
he was screaming into that. I've never seen. I know I've said that a lot, but I've never seen anything like it before. he was stood screaming in people's faces, "Follow Jesus!" And you're just like, I want to follow the beer, and that's all that's important right now.
Yeah.
Just shush.
If following Jesus means I
crazy.
gotta be like that guy, I'm not being that guy. I'm going to hell.
Yeah, I'd bring on hell. I mean, I'm pretty sure it doesn't exist, so I think I'm all right. But I just shush. Just shush. It was crazy. It was so crazy. And there was like this wall of, like we said, we've never felt more comfortable anywhere. You know what I mean? You felt really accepted. Everyone was laughing and joking, even though they were shouting hate at people. There was such a lovely atmosphere, and you know what I mean? So there was like a circle of just delight, and everyone was talking, and they were like excited that we were there from England, and we were having full-on conversations with people, and then these morons are just shouting, "You're a whore," and you're just like, I'm really not.
Well, one of the things I liked, which happens a lot when these kind of people kick off, is at random intervals, if somebody put a camera in your hand, it was for the express purpose of you taking a photograph of them and their partner, almost always same sex,
always
snogging the faces off each other right in front of them. I remember a girl came over to you, didn't she?
I had loads of people were like, take my picture.
So we just had same-sex couples just standing in front of them, snogging the faces off each other, taking pictures of them and going, "Enjoy your holiday," and they're just like, "Fuck these guys."
But when we went back, we were like on Instagram and we were on YouTube and stuff like that, and we started trying to do a bit of like looking into it.
Yeah.
And there were so many pictures of them on YouTube and Instagram, and literally if you just typed in Southern Decadence, it was just those guys and people in front of them, and videos of like that we're on, because we were talking with them a lot, and people were just coming and going, but we sort of spent a bit of time with them.
The Baptists, I can't even remember the church name because I really couldn't care less, but for the purposes of the podcast, I'll link the website, and I'll link the YouTube video that we're in very briefly. It just makes me laugh, and when you sent me the video, I looked at it and noticed you on it taking a picture, and then I noticed me laughing.
Yeah.
And I just thought, yes, we made the final cut. out of all of the shit that went down on that day, we're in it. We're in the cut. Yes.
We spent some serious time with them. We should be.
Right. Okay. So I'm just gonna wrap this part up,
yes.
and we'll head back to Norris and
for Norris's
and listen to
judgment.
We'll listen to his thoughts.
Yes, I wouldn't, because they're crazy.
So there'll be links in the description.
Definitely.
And we may hear from you in the future when I've got something relevant for Bonaventure.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's great.
All right, okay. Say goodbye to the fans.
Goodbye, fans.
Goodbye, Bonaventure.
Goodbye, Mr. Watchtower.
Okay, so you're back with Mr. Watchtower and
Norris.
You're back with Mr. Watchtower and Norris. That was our friend Bonaventure and myself discussing our trip to New Orleans.
It was a wonderful thing. I really enjoyed it.
What are your parting thoughts? Because we're going to have to wrap this up pretty soon.
You pretty much covered it all. I can't really... wonderful, horrifying...
It was, yeah.
Joyous, disgusting...
Then there's the sort of weird child abuse of this kid that was there as well.
Right, I'm going to stop you there very quickly.
Yeah.
Right? As much as I completely disagree with what those protesters, preachers, whatever you want to call them, were saying, you know, obviously the way they go about it, the aggression, the hatred, the just general nastiness, regardless of what they believe, even though I disagree with all that, at the end of the day, we live in, you know, a world where freedom of speech is, I don't know, it's really important. It's something we've kind of, you know, it's something that, you know, people have fought for, because it's, on the whole, it's a good thing that people can say what they want to say without the fear of being killed or punished, etc. So that I can live with. But the kid, that kind of really breaks my heart, because that kid really doesn't get to choose whether he's there or not. That kid goes where his dad tells him to go, or where his uncle tells him to go, or his mum, or whoever he was with at the time. Yeah. And it's not just completely inappropriate. it's a dangerous place to take a kid, because what if it kicks off?
Exactly, yeah. That was my point about having it that was sound in mind, that was anywhere near Bourbon Street, would not have wanted a 9-year-old child there. You just wouldn't, because it's not appropriate. Just because they would have viewed what was going on that street as Sodom and Gomorrah does not mean that they wanted to ram this into the face of children. Just like you wouldn't want a 9-year-old playing an 18 computer game, or like you wouldn't want them to watch a horror film. You also wouldn't want this child to be out with drunk people.
What annoys
any
me,
people.
What annoys me is that there were obviously police there.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't the police step in and say, "Excuse me, this child needs to go home. It's wrong for this child to be in this environment"?
I guess just because in America they seem to be more fearful of people having their religious freedoms. So they understand that by trying to stop the child, they would have been propositioned by the adults. The adults would have probably sued and won a lawsuit about protecting their religious rights, because the two brothers that me and Bonaventure were speaking to, they have previously won court battles.
But surely there's a law, like a child neglect sort of law. Every child, I think we can pretty much objectively agree that children should be in bed at 1 o'clock in the morning on a weekend.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if they're not asleep, they should at least be
contained
in the safety of their own bedroom.
Well, yeah, but we're dealing with the special case of America where religious freedoms trump all, and by religious freedoms I mean not so much religious freedoms in the way the founding fathers wished them to be, but like a strange skewed perspective of religious freedoms where it's not. It was supposed to be the freedom to practice or abstain from religion. Your right to practice a religion is protected, and your right to not practice a religion is protected. But now it's kind of morphed into this: if it's religious based, I am exempt from any form of criticism and certainly prosecution. That makes sense. Yeah. Anyway, right. I feel like the child abuse / indoctrination of children, I think that should maybe be a future show, because we need to wrap this one up.
Okay.
So we'll put that one down on the cards. We'll discuss, and being that you do have 2 daughters, it's probably a subject that might be close to your heart. So we'll go into it in a little more depth. Yeah.
And for the record, my daughters go to a Catholic primary school.
Yes, they do. Bum bum bum.
So.
Also, we'll include the fact that your daughter has been learning about adaptations, aka evolution. It's a strange little cocktail, isn't it? The old Catholic school system. Anyway, okay, right. We'll leave that for another time. Just for now, Norris, we're going to say goodbye to the fans.
Goodbye, fans. It's been a wonderful experience to talk amongst you.
Amongst you. So I guess we're going to sign off, yeah?
Yeah.
So this is Mr. Watchtower signing off. Goodbye, everybody. Say goodbye, Norris.
Goodbye, Norris.
Just remember, there is no God, but if there is, may he strike us down.